Welcome all, Wesley. Oh, wow. Everybody, this is a very special podcast. Not in particularly anything different, but it's special to me.
It's special because for the rest of the future, this studio will eventually be finished.
Yep.
And we're only going to have a few of these recorded where there's the most expensive material known to man right now.
Plywood.
The plywood that's going to be visible. We all know it's in here, but it's going to be covered with stuff. So it is special.
Today, our guest is the king of Christian comedy himself, the cultivator.
Wait, John Christ is here?
The cultivator of kindness from our creator, the breaker of chains, Mr. Jordan Weaver.
There's no way. There's no way. It's going to go down from that introduction.
Hey, Jordan.
Is John Christ, is he back?
Yes.
We're good.
I think so.
You know, I feel like, okay, this is not where we're going tonight, but I feel like if you don't know who John Christ is, he was a comedian, kind of went through some, we'll just say, turmoil. Mm-hmm. And you're like, man, it's weird because a Christian comedian gets held to like a weird standard compared to other comedians.
Yeah.
However, if you think about it, forgiveness is like real high on the Christian scale. Mm. And so he gets to come back from being canceled. Interesting. So he got canceled for being not very Christian-y. Mm-hmm. And then because he was in the Christian lane.
Yeah. It's weird how...
That doesn't happen for pastors.
Yeah, pastors are like, you should have known better.
You get one cancellation and it's permanent.
It's weird how my age group, and Wesley and John are here, but where there's a underlining, like, not fear, but knowledge of, you could get canceled if you say something wrong at the wrong time kind of thing. And I think don't really worry about it because if you're not a, dirtbag, you'll be fine.
Well, and I think there's nothing worse than someone measuring what they're doing all the time. I think it was C.S. Lewis said there's no way to make a good impression if you're worried about the kind of impression that you're making.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So if you're always worried about getting canceled, I feel like the likelihood of you saying something, or just being fundamentally unlikable as a result. And you're like, man, it'd almost be worse just to go and get canceled. Hey, we are live.
We are live.
So that means people that ask questions. Mm-hmm. We've got a screen right here. Yep. We can see the questions.
We've got we hired a chemical engineer to run the cameras for us.
That's true. That actually is true.
A week from now.
An English teacher.
An engineer. Yeah, basically Levi is jaunting about the United States.
Maybe we should have sent a chemical engineer with Levi and Jordan to route the trip home because they said they were in Kansas today.
Well, yeah, I am interested to see how that came about.
Well, they say it's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Yeah, a little bit about the destination.
I feel like the Wolf Boys are taking that like very serious.
Yeah,
it's just all about the journey. Yeah. All over America, getting here when you get here.
Yeah, seriously. So if a camera angle is wrong, just message Wesley or get angry at Wesley.
Well, it's a chemical engineer, not a sound engineer. So
it's very true, very different.
It is.
One's about chemicals.
Yep.
Others about sound.
It's true.
What are we talking about today?
Tell me why this studio is important, because I feel like that's a question that's going to need answered in the future.
Yes.
Essentially, that's not what we're talking about, but we can get to that.
Yeah. Essentially, everything we did before the studio happened, we had to set up everything. And then after we recorded it, we had to tear down everything, which doesn't seem like much, but if you see the gear, that takes hours out of the day. And so essentially the studio is the house for all of that creation. So it's a time saver, which in turn makes more content available.
Well, and the media office was like in the children's building during COVID.
Right. Yeah.
And if you've ever been to the Powell Butte campus, it's like rock floors.
Right.
So everything bounces. And I really am confident that everything that we're going to do in the future is going to be shaped by what we're able to create in this space right here.
Yeah, seriously. No, because it's a clean canvas, and that is intimidating, but then also very encouraging and exciting.
It's a clean enough canvas that it's not even finished yet.
Literally, yeah.
It's not even done being built.
Yeah, the rock is actually behind you. Have you looked at it?
Yes.
Just the boxes of rock behind you? Yeah. Anyway, looks good. It will look good.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Should we write the verses on the plywood?
How funny would that be if we write the verses but in the wrong spot, and they're like, nope, that part's already finished.
Just like
paint over that
on right here. Yeah. So the sermon yesterday.
Yes.
Let's talk
We're gonna try. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna spend this summer. This is what I'm excited about.
Yeah.
as a communicator, I feel like there's just a few things that I'm able to contribute that actually matter. And as weird as that sounds, I've been missing just the feedback and the communication. I know that we've got ideas for a podcast during the week that it's just an outlet. It's strictly an outlet, like surrendering the outcome, wherever that goes, great. Something that we're able to continue through the winter, set up where no matter what time of the year it is, we can continue that.
Right.
Monday nights, we're going to kind of play with it and see if we can do basically a sermon recap, because you're sitting there. It's really not the right setting to ask questions on a Sunday morning during a sermon, especially if it's a video, because you can't stop it. But this is kind of like our chance Monday nights to sit down and recap. If there's questions, if you're taking notes, which by the way, what's the retention on that? I'd be interested. Maybe John and Wesley would know.
Yeah. Seriously.
What that does for retention to take notes, because then Monday night, somebody's going to be taking that, whether it's me and you or whoever, but that the Monday night is going to have sort of the like unpack it, ask questions.
Yeah. I know. Taking notes in general is huge. And so, when I edit the sermons, that's usually my opportunity, because if I am taking notes and forget about something that is important to the recording process, that doesn't usually go over
well. And also, we're going to try to get the notes loaded. If I think this will help. I don't know how we're going to do it yet, but I want to get the notes loaded to where when people show up at church, with the new platform, they show up and the notes are available. So that even if they're not taking notes, we're getting to send them home with something.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the Monday night unpack. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so the sermon from Sunday was recorded near the beginning of COVID.
Right. As I think we were like 8 weeks into the shutdown.
Right. And so it was a while ago. So you're going to have to remind me, I guess what the everything was.
Well, this is what's crazy is that I've got a real, like, if you go to the body of work that we've got here at Shiloh, that we've put it, we've covered a lot of territory, but my memory is so short that I was listening back and it was like, I remembered learning it, but I didn't remember knowing it. And so you hear stuff back and you're like, oh, that's right. I know that sounds like a weird thing, but I feel like I'm preaching to myself. It's like a note from the past of like, like a diary or something where like, hey, don't forget that you were learning this in this season. And then here we are a year later, and it's like we're coming out of it. But don't forget, like they said in the Old Testament, like build altars and stuff. Don't forget, tell your kids. Right. And if you think about that, if a generation doesn't tell their children, it's gone like that.
Yeah.
The whole history of everything that we know. And so to get to hear that back again, it was nice for me as a refresher of like, I need, and you know what we do on like the holiday weekends, we know it's going to be light. And so I didn't want anybody to miss where we're going Sunday. We're in this painful thinking series. And so it's funny because this goes kind of like right along in with that.
Yeah. It's funny how, so Joe Rogan describes like time sometimes in people. So he'll say, oh, that was 3 peoples ago, like World War II was, 2 peoples ago.
Right.
And it's crazy to think about because we think of those times as a long time ago. But just like you said, if your parents don't teach you about it, it's forgotten quick.
Yeah.
And it really is, because it was, 2 peoples ago was something incredibly important that we just.
Well, and I think when you think of it as like a practical thing of like telling your kids, it's not you better read your Bible and say your prayers so you're not a bad person. It's like, hey, if you guys miss this and you don't, because, and kids have their own journeys and stuff and they'll come back to whatever they're going to believe, but to at least know what it is that we believe and how we got there.
Right. Absolutely. So what was the overall
we almost titled yesterday? We almost titled it "What the Font," and I almost wish we had the guts to do it because it's just shocking enough that people are like, "What did he titled it? What?" Yeah. I think it would probably been too offensive, but was it Daniel Oppenheimer? Yeah, right. His study said, and there's other studies like it that said that by making the font more difficult, you're more likely to slow down and catch what it's saying. Mm-hmm. Like if you look up at a billboard and it says "for sale," or for rent, your eye can look up, capture that whole message, and process it without you ever leaving your conscious train of thought.
Right.
But if you look up at something and you don't get it, and you have to kind of look for a second. It's like that Thinking Fast and Slow book, conscious, unconscious mind. When it travels into your conscious mind, that by making the font more difficult, what that does is it increases your opportunity to understand what's there. Mm. That to me alone is when people go, I don't understand the Bible. Well, make it in a more difficult
spend more
font.
Time. Yeah, that's true. Because I'm thinking about, the term font can be interpreted a lot of different ways. Just making something, or spending more time on a thing. I usually use mechanics as like a example because I mean, I don't know why, but I mean, you like take apart an engine and put it back together. You have a very clear understanding of how that all works.
Right.
But before you do that, I mean, it's like a whole nother language, you know?
Right.
So the same thing, you know, with the Bible is you have to literally dissect it, take it apart, figure out what the whole idea is, you know, and put it back together. And you can do that your entire life.
Well, and I think that's the thing is as you're progressing, you see life from the perspective of a child, and then you see life as a perspective of like a teenager, young adult. And every time you progress, you can look at the exact same thing in the Word, and it's going to mean something that is more mature because it doesn't change, but we're changing.
Right.
So let me tell you my challenge. I'm curious who all's listening. Here's my challenge is that I have been frustrated with the fact that as a nation, we have this ability to hear and dismiss. Mm-hmm. Like we just hear it and we're like, yeah, sounds good.
Right.
There's just a
and one out the other.
Yeah, just a general lack of curiosity. And so that to me was, and this is probably going to be inflammatory, that was my not dismissing the suffering, not dismissing the fact that people lost loved ones and stuff like that. I'm not downplaying that. But that was my favorite part of COVID is that people lost their confidence. And the minute they lost their confidence because the font got more difficult, people started looking deeper into who Jesus was. All of a sudden it was like, we do need that. And what's been so frustrating to me as a pastor is how quickly people want to dismiss it again. I mean, myself included, like I get busy and I'm not, I mean, no judgment, I guess, but if you're not careful, life gets too easy, then you stop. Right. And that's part of that sermon yesterday too, was like, there's a scope of expectation. Life is going to get weird. And you're like, yeah, real weird. But then this point and this point.
Yeah.
And the minute it travels outside that, you're like, wait, what? And that's kind of what Jesus was saying with the waves is like, hey, I'm going to take this beyond your ability to cope because it expands your knowledge of like, what does it mean to be danger? You're not supposed to be in danger of Jesus. And Jesus is like,
I'm not going to be here one day. We have to learn how to deal with this.
Yeah. Or that, and I'm here today.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the fact that there were people that got bored with Jesus? Well, and I think about like, this is something that I've been trying to surrender the outcome, but there were masses of people that listened to what Jesus had to say in the moment. And they're like,
I don't know about this guy.
And then wandered off.
Yeah.
To the point that Jesus looked at his disciples. He's like,
move on.
What about you guys?
Yeah.
You guys want to leave too? And their answer wasn't, no, we don't want to leave. Their answer was, well, if you're right, there's nowhere else to go. It's just hard.
Right.
It just is like, we just have to endure it. You know, that's that in my mind, that's where this series of painful thinking, like, it's like we move away from discomfort. Whatever is uncomfortable, we move away from it.
Right.
And painful thinking means that you rationally think through life to the point that when you discover something that's difficult, but that's also true, you lean into it.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it a lot and I've experienced it in my life where people say, you pray when you stop praying when things are good, so pray even when your life is comfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing. When you're just comfortable for so long, you forget what it's like.
Don't you think those are the worst people on earth is people who've never experienced discomfort?
Yeah. I mean, you think of, we joke about it, all the time with the idea of, rich kids that get money from their, great grandpa or something, and they just have no comprehension of how hard that is and how hard it is to just grind through life. And so it's iconic in movie and just stories in general. Those are the jerks that just don't have an understanding.
They're the people we all root against.
Yeah, seriously.
What's crazy is they don't have any roots. It's a different kind of suffering because everything's meaningless. They've never had to see something through. Remember BJ Penn in the UFC? He was Hawaiian and was good. It was like really good. And that was the thing everybody said was so amazing was he grew up so like from a really wealthy family, and just how rare that is that somebody who grew up with the opportunity to not be tough was dirty tough. And
weird.
So when you do see somebody that overcomes that, it's almost like they are overcoming the odds. In a sense, different kinds of odds, but they are kind of overcoming the odds. Somebody who didn't face they didn't have the choice. Yeah, they didn't. They had they had the choice to avoid it and didn't. That's just incredibly rare.
Yeah.
What's up, Nicole Baker?
Yeah.
Friend from Utah, our Prineville friend that's in Utah.
Wow, Utah. Great place.
Yeah.
But so you used the term, when you're weak, then in the Bible, when I am weak, then I am strong.
Right.
And you made the joke of, that's usually when people just move on because they're like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But the idea of in faith, when I am weak and I have to completely rely on Jesus, that's when my faith flames up and becomes my driving factor.
I think that's what with the waves, and there was something that this is kind of uncomfortable to say because I know I'm the one that said it, but I said it long enough ago.
Yeah.
Then when I heard it back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's
what a guy, this guy.
But the waves became the translator.
Yeah.
That Jesus is trying to teach them something that they couldn't have seen had there not been problems bigger than themselves.
Right.
And it's like he was using the waves of their life to translate himself because they're like, well, those are bigger than us. And he's like,
I'm literally God.
Prineville friend moving home to Prime. Come on. You bet. Doesn't everyone experience discomfort, human experience? Yes. First of all, yes, you're going to experience discomfort. And I think the worst kind of discomfort is choosing comfort until, for instance, you don't go to the gym, you don't watch your eating habits,
right.
You don't live a healthy lifestyle, you ignore the signs, and you look up one day and you've got physical issues that are developing because of a lack of discomfort. Let me say it this way, because of the lack of a chosen discomfort, it becomes uncomfortable. I mean,
right.
You're not getting around the suffering.
Yeah.
Leaning into that painful thought, the painful thinking, I mean, you're gonna suffer. There are times where, Jordan Peterson is such a brilliant guy, but he said the ultimate good in life might be to avoid unnecessary suffering. Now, I'm not saying that that's right, but when able to avoid unnecessary suffering, not the necessary suffering, but you ever know somebody like this is just kind of a dummy and they just keep doing stuff and you're like, it's so avoidable. That's
right.
so avoidable. That you're suffering, but you don't have to. It's avoidable. Right. That living a life that avoids unnecessary suffering, even if that means choosing suffering today. And man, that I can't get away from that. Like that has been such an interesting philosophy because Timothy Keller posted something the other day that said, everything that is sad will be proven untrue.
Explain that.
I don't know. I don't know it exactly.
Okay.
But everything that is sad today will be proven untrue on an eternal scale. And if that's true, I mean, that's
like your understanding of why it's sad, maybe?
I don't know fully yet.
Okay.
But if you can think of life on that concept of like, this is a simulation. I think there's something when people are like, life is a simulation. There is something as people that we like, hold on a minute. Why does that somehow make sense?
Yeah.
And I think what we see in an eternal scale is like, well, all the suffering is in the end avoidable.
Okay.
When it's all said and done, all suffering, when it's over in the end, can be avoided. That's where I start to go like, wait a minute, it's too big. In my weakness, because I can't avoid suffering for people. It's the hardest part of my job to preach Jesus, watch people get it, lose it, hurt themselves, come back. And you're like, I feel like sometimes my job is a waste. And I think sometimes this is how teachers maybe in school would have to feel is like,
oh yeah,
I can't want it for you. I can only make it available to you, but I can't want it for you. You see people that they will anesthetize their suffering by thinking that God is on their side in this season. The waves go down, off they go again. And that there is suffering in the future that could have been avoided. And yet.
Interesting. I'm making this connection now, but something that really stood out to me, Casey Neistat. Do you know who that is? He's a YouTuber, business guy. Anyway, he said, he's very business minded and he's very much a, work harder kind of guy, New York mindset, just go. And he said the worst thing for business is to be comfortable, and so he strives to, when he becomes comfortable, he takes on something bigger that makes him uncomfortable, because that's just.
My wife's over there looking like, no, Jordan, no.
Don't take it on.
No.
Yeah.
We're coming off a year of taking on everything.
Because he said, when I'm uncomfortable, that's when I grow the most.
Right.
And so when you're comfortable, you're just stagnant. It's like a plateau.
The font's too easy.
Right. And so I just now made the connection of it's the same thing with spirituality. But he said the greatest thing is, and I'm understanding this as like an artist kind of mindset of when you're in that comfortable plateau, challenging yourself within that spot to make it uncomfortable so that you will learn. So think about it differently, do it a different way, a different approach, so that again, you can dissect that thing further and become an expert on that topic. So when you're in a period of life, when you are comfortable, when things are just working really well, when your relationships are just working and everything is good,
right?
Thinking and actively choosing to put your mindset in a bad, or not a bad place, but challenging. Okay, how would I be reading this if I was just when I was sad in a bad place? Because you could be learning something that could prevent that in the future,
Yes. What you're doing is you're avoiding future unnecessary suffering.
Right.
There's something so sad to me, and I'm not like a bleeding heart type personality, but there's something so sad about going to a zoo and you see a tiger and it's like overweight and it's laying around and it's like, can you just let me go? Mm-hmm. Let me just go get one of those people. What if Tuesday was just the day that I got to be wild? But you realize like their food is taken care of. They have they're suffering. And I'm using suffering in air quotes. There's no suffering per se.
Right.
But because of a lack of suffering, it leads to this deep, soulful suffering. And you can just tell like they're just glossed over. And I think that's the fear. Maybe that's the fear is like, hey, if I'm not suffering right now, somehow, it's going to pop up later somewhere else.
Interesting.
Because like a lot of those animals, they say if you turn them back loose again, they can't survive because they've lost their ability to compete in the world.
Huh. This goes back to a conversation I had with John years ago, probably. But I raised the question of, will we ever look back on history and think about that was the happiest or the most, the happiest we were. Right. Meaning everything's constantly getting better, constantly upgrading. You got a car that has this, and that.
What's the joy of living in a rich country is the expectation is it's always moving to better.
Right. But when will we look back and be like, man, those struggles really, because we see a progressive, higher cases in mental illness, higher cases, depression, and just people starting to suffer in different ways than they did 50 years ago or 100 years ago or whatever. Will we ever look back and say, right then was really when we had the perfect amount of suffering that prevented suffering that would have happened if we didn't have that, and so on. And it's interesting how that plays in.
Ed Helms' character on The Office one time said that's the problem with the good old days is that you don't know you're in them until they're over. There's a Malcolm Gladwell
That's Andy,
book.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was like,
which is funny because that's like a real insightful thing to say for somebody who's kind of a dopey character.
Yeah.
But they were saying that during the bombings in, I'm going to mess up the details. I want to say Berlin.
Okay.
Maybe?
Yeah, that sounds right.
There was like 52 days of bombing, wherever that was. I'm messing up the details, but that there were people that would escape. And there are stories of people who were coming back. And they're like, why would you come back? And they go, because I've got a sense of community. I wake up, we're trying to survive, we're taking care of each other. And it's like the happiest they've ever been. They said that when it was over, there were signs that said we missed the bombings. Like,
jeez,
just that the good old days.
You never look
we
at
almost them. Well, and we almost never know. We almost never know what's good or what's bad because sometimes what we thought was good produces real bad results. Sometimes what we think is like this is terrible, it produces good results. And it's almost when I say surrendering the outcome. Little Valley, New York. Wow, that's Jamie Putnam's one. That doesn't mean anything to you, but. Hi.
Cool.
But the suffering that we're in sometimes produces so much better that you're like, man, unnecessary suffering isn't always the presence of pain. Sometimes the unnecessary suffering is that we weren't willing to be uncomfortable. And now there's just a dull sort of simmering pointlessness to life that, Lacey said, we were watching the Iron Dome videos when Israel and Palestine are going at it. And she's like, man, that'd be terrible. And I said, I think we kind of agreed that, yeah, it would be terrible, but there's at least a sense of purpose every day. Like you'd have people in your house and sleeping on your floors, and like, it's not a normal time. It's a time of war, but it's a time of bonding and camaraderie and patriotism. And even in the worst of times, there are little hidden secrets that come. And I guess that's what I'm saying. Like when Jesus is using the waves, what he's saying is like, hey, what are you doing? Like you're as desperate on the beach as you are in the sea. It's just that you don't see it. Like how could he have demonstrated himself, tell his waves be still? How could you have demonstrated on that on the beach? Because he'd be like, hey, guys, it's like basically a party trick. It's like a party trick. If you're sitting on the beach, he's like, hey, waves, stop. And it stops. Everybody's like, man, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah, cool.
Unless you're in it.
Do it again.
Yeah. Honestly, guys, come here. Watch this. Do it again. And even so much is that there were places that Jesus would go and they're like, do some more of those miracles. And he's like, it wouldn't matter what I did. Because you're not interested in the suffering that comes with believing. You're only interested in the perks. And I mean, I think that's the hardest part of pastoring in America right now, is that everybody wants the perks, and the suffering that comes with it is we have taught in our churches that it's something to avoid.
Yeah. I mean, because I was trying to think of turning down, or I guess not. Okay, so for a person that is following Jesus in the kingdom of God, and so on, and preventing unneeded suffering in the future. I guess I was trying to think of an example or a situation where that would be prevalent, and I'm thinking you get home from work and then you just relax, you crack a cold one and all this different kind of stuff. But then fast forward 10 years later, well, maybe that solution there ended up in an unneeded suffering later, where now you're, drinking an entire fifth of whatever to solve that issue, for that day, versus, God's saying you choose not to do things sometimes to prevent future suffering.
I had a friend, and I won't say his name because I don't think I got permission to talk about it, but when we were kids, all we wanted to do was rodeo. That was it. Like we'd go to any rodeo. It didn't matter how little or jackpot. Like if you got to get in your truck and trailer and go somewhere, it was just awesome. And then if you win something, it's even better. Like that's exhibit A. This guy goes on to have like a really successful career rodeo and goes to the biggest rodeos in the world and has success, wins the biggest rodeos in the world. And he said it's weird because if you go back, the same thing that was cool 5 years ago is nothing now. The exact same spot on this conveyor belt now that was so cool 5 years ago, you progress out of it. And if you don't choose to progress, the same thing that made you happy today is going to make you miserable tomorrow. And if you watch the Tiger Woods documentary, you see a guy who's just like, I don't know how to be happy. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I've
achieved it.
Literally. And so his suffering was, they said that Tiger Woods' dad, Ernie, built him from the outside in. And the inside never got finished. And what is so fascinating, my favorite part of that documentary, if you haven't seen it, it's on HBO, go watch it. After all of his struggles, after all of his public failures and all this stuff, it says he comes back and he's like, man, I just was glad to be back with the guys. I wasn't golfing because I had to be this strict.
Right.
And there's a scene in there where he's messing with one of the other golfers and he like is playful. And you see him like laughing. Smile. And through the entire documentary, you're like, man, it was the breaking. It was the suffering that he went through that almost pushed the reset button for him in a way that allowed him to enjoy it for the joy of what it was rather than the performance or the end game.
Yeah.
And I've never heard Tiger profess to be a believer. I don't think that for all intents and purposes, there's nothing that would tell me that he is, but there's something about that suffering that you go through that lets the light kind of come back in, the breaking. John said, how do you differentiate between constructive suffering, discomfort, and destructive suffering, discomfort?
Constructive versus
constructive. Like, well, there are people that are like, I tell you what, God, I'll suffer for you. Surely we all know religious fanatics that are like, that's it, I'll suffer for you. But my wife is giggling at me. Is it led in love or fear? I would say is the constructive versus destructive, because anything done in fear, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. God's not happy with me. Anything there's a book, and he's got some stuff. I've heard Timothy Jennings say some things, and I'm like, I'm not sure if that's right. So like I'm referring to him, but with an asterisk. But he talks about a life driven in love versus a life driven in fear. Steve Stone is in Belize right now, or maybe just got back. And he loves it so much. He goes down there, he's building homes for these women that are coming out of the sex trafficking, and he loves it. Like, there is suffering associated with that. I mean, there's financial investment, there's his time, things like that. You get down, but you just see his heart, like even in the suffering, his heart, like he is motivated by love for these people that are so disenfranchised. I think, okay, let me say it this way. John, here's my official answer. If you're doing it out of a sense of deficit to try to fill your cup, then that's probably unnecessary. If you're doing it out of excess, of like, God has been so good to me, I want to invest into growth. I love these podcasts.
Interesting. Volunteering and that kind of stuff, meaning like, yeah, okay.
When we've said that we want to surrender the outcome, one of the things that I think I have to kind of have like a gut check moment is like, am I doing this because we're trying to grow a platform, or am I doing this because someone's going to hear it and it's going to make an impact in their lives? Like, the way that they think is going to change, their lives are going to change. If someone can hear what we're doing right now and their lives change, it changes the way that they're a husband, it changes the way that they're a parent or their work or whatever. There will be legacies that come out of what God teaches right here in this platform. And if I can honor that and do this in such a way that I'm not trying to benefit to validate my name, I'm saying, God, you've taught me, help me to teach others, then whatever suffering comes into that, whatever sort of discomfort or effort that we have, and this is, I mean, I'm not saying we're suffering at all, but you can do the exact same thing and it be dictated by fear and it smells bad. It doesn't pass the smell test. You can do the exact same thing out of a heart of love, and for some reason people are like, yeah, I believe that, I get that. So love or fear, I think that's kind of where it's at. And what I'm ruining a sermon now, I'm preaching on it. But when the Bible says love your neighbor as yourself, he's telling you to love your neighbor, right?
Okay.
But who else is he telling you to love?
Yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to listen to that and go, well, he's telling me to love my neighbor. Well, no, he's also telling you to love yourself, because otherwise, if you hate yourself and you're just constantly beating yourself down and don't worry, did you hear? There's an article about a guy who was trying to fast for 41 days to beat Jesus' record.
Died, dude. Oh.
It's not funny that he died. It's not funny, but his motivation was to beat Jesus' record.
Yeah,
and
it's like, Jesus, my guy.
This is not it. Like, you're not suffering to like get.
Yeah.
You're saying even if suffering is included, then I'm so driven by love. I mean, you look at a young person who's in love, the amount of just chaos they'll put themselves through to like be with this person that has got their heart captured. Right. And like, we're geared towards the kind of suffering that is motivated in love. We just are. Mm-hmm. If you're doing it out of fear because you're afraid God's mad at you or all these different things, man, it's a slippery slope.
Well, and you don't get the same benefit from it. You know, I mean, because I'm thinking I'm using volunteering as a I don't know, an example. You know, if you volunteer at a soup kitchen, because it's like I've been eating really good, and I know what it's like to not eat good or something, and so just to be doing that, serving people, whatever. But then there's the same thing of I'm doing this for a college credit, or I'm doing this, you know, because I have to, because I want Jesus to, you know, think I did good or something like that. The conversations you have with people, the way it makes you feel. I mean, you don't get nearly what you get out of if you did it with love.
I've seen videos, I know you have too, on social media, where it's like a homeless guy, and this guy pulls up, he's like, hey, do you want a tent? And the guy's like, oh, what am I going to say? No.
Yeah.
You know? Steve Stone commented, hey, I don't know how I missed that. It's not coming up in order. The comments aren't coming up in order, are they? Steve, hi back. Sorry, I missed you. The guy's like, yeah, of course I want a tent, but he's having to like ask for it. Yeah. So then like, it's just crazy. It is crazy to me to think the kind of personality that it takes to video yourself like, hey, poor person, you want me to help you? Yeah. Say it. Say okay, yes. I'll help you. And then come back and give them a tent, and you're like, see what I did? And like, it's got tent. What's crazy to me is that people buy it. There's like hundreds of thousands of shares, and you're like, ugh.
I saw this one.
How do we not see through that?
This has absolutely nothing to do with anything we're talking about, really. But I saw this video. Just a funny guy, but he said, "What's up, guys? We're about to go, you know, prank some homeless people by giving them cool stuff." So he's like, but we're pranking them by not recording it. And so he like walks around a corner. He's like, "What's up, man? You know, I hope you have a great day today." And then comes back around the corner. He's like, "Dude, I got him, idiot, man. He didn't know we were recording and stuff." But it's to show the ridiculousness of actually recording that situation. You know, because you lose the entire purpose of it. Yeah.
I try, and I'm gonna have to figure this out, because in my own life, I haven't found the right balance, but I almost overcorrect the other direction. It's easier for me for people to think I'm a little bit uncaring or a little bit disengaged or a little bit this way. I would almost people be surprised when they find out I'm better than I am, or that I love people, or that I am generous. Like it's a personal value of mine to be generous, and no one should ever know how. No one should ever know when I do stuff for people. No one should ever know. Like if I do something on a GoFundMe, it's anonymous. And the reason for that is I am so hesitant to build up an image or a brand, especially as a pastor, where people are like, aren't you supposed to blah, blah, blah? I would so much rather people be like, how's that guy a pastor? I can live with that rather than like, you're the most loved guy in the community. You better not screw that up. And you're like, okay, all right.
And then you throw a rock at a dog or something, and then people are like, no way.
At Donut. Yeah.
That Donut. How is Donut?
Consistent.
Consistent.
Lacey caved this week, and she's like, I admit it. I hate Donut. 5 minutes later, do you know how she decided she was going to deal with Donut's barking and just tearing stuff up? Mm-hmm. She's like, have you thought about, maybe we should just like let her in the house. I've got good dogs, very good dogs that have never seen the inside of the house.
Yeah.
Donut slept at the foot of our bed. And here's what makes me so mad about Donut. She was on her freaking best behavior. She read the situation.
She's like, this is brilliantly,
my time. Because she's like, I'll
Smart
just lay
dog,
here.
Jed.
And Lacey, like, she wakes up the next morning. She's like, Donut did really good. I think that's the right move. And I'm like,
you're letting her win.
You cannot stop screwing me over, you idiot dog. Like I think she has separation anxiety.
She's preventing future suffering.
She has the ability to dial it back at exactly the right time and be like, I'm cool.
I think dogs are way smarter than we give them credit for. Well, some dogs.
I hate her.
Here's the thing. Okay, Wesley's dog, Apollo is his name. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Again, rabbit hole. Apollo.
We didn't agree that we were going to talk about anything.
Hey, listen. This is part of the gig.
What kind of dog is Apollo?
I don't know. German Shepherd, Hound mix, Black Lab mix.
Give Donut Prozac.
So he is perceived. You would look at him because he has a look about him. And he drools, okay, and he just loves everybody. So you'll look at him, and you'll come to a conclusion in your mind that maybe he's dumb, and for all intents and purposes, maybe he is. But I don't think so, because when you throw a ball at him, he literally looks like he's trying to catch it with his paws, or there's a giant stick on the ground, okay. There's a giant stick on the ground, and you'll see him. He looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. It's like your dog, bite it with your teeth, but he's like moving it around with his paws and stuff. I think
like he's been a person first, and he's still trying to get the hang of being a dog.
I think he's so smart that he sees Wesley or one of us pick up a stick, and he's like, "That looks so much easier than doing it with your mouth." I got to figure that out.
I'm glad this is recording because it's the only nice thing I'll ever say about Donut. Have you ever been to the zoo and you see an elephant? And the way they look at you, or like a baboon, the way they look at you, they've got those eyes that are kind of like, you're looking directly into my eyes.
Yeah.
You're not like
you're
like
conscious
they just
of me right
focus
now.
on you. And it's like this brown, like just super focused, like an elephant eye
scary.
or about, it is. Yeah. That's the only thing I will say about Donut. When she looks at you, and even in her stupidity and barking and idiot and running, when she looks at you, she has this look of like, I'm going to win.
I know this situation.
I know exactly what I'm doing. The moment someone weakens and lets me in the house, I'm going to my best behavior. I'm going to be an inside dog, and there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Dang. Man, hey, listen, I don't know if I could outsmart that dog. I think I probably could. I notched myself down there.
I shouldn't talk about her because I'm also reserving the opportunity that in the future she's going to be someone else's dog. And so if I like talk about her too much, people are like, hey, how's Donut? And I'm just going to have to keep repeatedly saying I gave my son's dog away.
Or you're going to say, hey, do you want this dog? And somebody's like, no.
That's Donut.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard to get her away.
What was the overarching thought, the conclusion, the lesson for that?
To me, the waves are the translator. The font gets more difficult. Like anytime in life, and like you see people with a cancer diagnosis, you see people go through a divorce, you see people when their kids are living in a way that's concerning, the font gets more difficult. And it's like the waves become the translator for what Jesus is trying to communicate. Because if not for the difficult seasons of life, if everything that is sad will become untrue. If that's true, if the more I digest that and try to figure that out, if it turns out that I agree with that, then what he's doing is all the sadness will be rectified in the end. And he's using the waves of our life, those chaotic times of life, to better tell the story of who he is in our life. Because if you think life is manageable and you pretty much got it, that to me is so much scarier than feeling out of control.
Yeah. I mean, that is a terrifying thought. I think about that. Well, I usually, like Lydia and I, when we're talking about deeper stuff, big things, housing and future plans and all this stuff, it builds until you're like, I have no idea what to do. And I always kind of boil down the thought of, okay, I don't want me to know exactly what to do. Right. I arguably don't want the pressure of having to figure out my entire life and every step behind it. So the thought of, or, the verse that says, tomorrow has enough worries for itself, focus on today. I think directly that speaks to me as like, I got it. Learn today, learn something today, and trust that I'll build upon it later. The same thing as learn something from today, and I'm going to prevent future suffering later.
Yeah. It's like the teeter-totter. Do I want to suffer now, or do I want to suffer later?
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's suffering to surrender to God. It is suffering because I'm like, that means I'm not going to get to handle it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be the one to fix this. I'm not going to be the one to figure it out. I'm not going to be the one that's able to accurately predict everything.
Sure.
It feels like suffering to me to surrender outcomes to what God wants.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't, it's going to produce way more suffering later.
Right.
If I just scratch the itch of trying to solve every problem in my life today, it's going to produce way more suffering later.
Right.
Attitude is so important. To know joy follows sadness, and having issues or problems stretch the brain and heart for solutions. I think that's it. It's like the suffering that you choose now prevents suffering that is avoidable later.
Yeah.
Painful thinking. I really anticipate this being one of our most meaningful sermon series that we've ever had, is the painful thinking, because what do you do when you arrive at a painful solution? When you arrive and you go, I believe that's right, but ugh.
But man, that's awful.
There's nothing worse in my life. There's nothing worse than operating under a sense of optimism, and then you see something accurately or truthfully, and what you realize is it was never good. You just thought it was. Mm-hmm. And it feels worse. You just kind of like when a young person moves out and they're like, I got it. Mm-hmm. And then they move out, and the reality
the house
has always been there.
Right.
It's just that you don't see it. And the painful thinking is, wait a minute, I finally see it. Now I'm able to get to work on it. Now I'm able to change the way that I think about my relationships, about my jobs. Like I fully anticipate. I mean, I'm excited to get to it. But that painful thinking that says, I'm choosing discomfort today. I'm choosing new thought patterns today. I'm gonna choose to shape how I think based on what the word says, and then I'm just gonna live with the consequences. Right. To me, that's faith. That's faith that says, if I will just lean into the areas where God has said, hey, see the waves? Yeah, I can fix the waves. The waves, see, and proof of that is Jesus like, I can get rid of the waves. But what did we learn here?
Right. Yeah.
Don't wake me up.
Don't wake me up. That's what we're learning. Housekeeping. So we are, so Mondays we're thinking are going to be like a sermon recap.
Yeah, I think this is cool. I like the idea of more of a hang session the rest of the week to kind of, one of the things that's, we can get to it. But yeah, I like this format for Monday. I'm curious what you guys think. Let us know. Even if you're watching this later, let us know what you think. I like kind of unpacking the sermon. That's sort of what they do on Bible study, on the women's group, men's group, same idea.
Yeah.
For people that are like, well, we work, we can't get to it. This is just another opportunity.
This is like the Bible study.
Well, yeah. I really wish that more churches would do that, where they would take whatever was Sunday morning and sort of unpack that a little bit more, because you see a lot of external like Bible study on this and Bible study on that. And like the whole church is learning 1,000 different things. Maybe we'll get back to that. Maybe there will be a day, but I love that it sort of keeps everybody hovering around the same season. Yeah, for sure. Keep it going, guys. Yes, sir.
Sweet. And then you're thinking maybe in the middle of the week or sometime we do another podcast where it's just like a different topic, or
I would like to, until we're happy with what we've got, because to me we've got a lot of mountains to climb right now.
Sure.
And so what I would really like to do, hey, what's up, Lydia? What I would really like to do is do one every day and just record it, and then the ones that we like, put it out, and the ones that we don't. Right. But live on Monday nights, and then the rest of it just sort of figured out. I would love to build something. Here's what I see. I would love to build a podcast that we're able to keep doing whether I'm in town or not.
Oh yeah.
We've got a space down there in Wickenburg that would work. It would work great as a studio midweek.
If only there was a thing that like, you know, you could send voices and imagery through just air, and then it gets received on maybe another device in a different location.
So we've got all summer to invent
and we've
something,
got engineers
to invent something like that. And we've got, if it's chemical, if it's a
or
chemical
mechanical.
solution
John's
or mechanical,
yeah,
or in the English language, I would have to think that it's probably
I'll
not
make a
going to
video
be in the English language.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be solved in a different language. I would say Mandarin. I don't know. If it's technology, I have to believe. Anyway, I love every time you go live, whether or not you get to church in real time or not. Yes, this, as much as I like it, this is no small thing for where we're going. This right here, what we're doing, is no small part of where I feel like God's taking us. Because like I said, communication is it seems like that's the area that God has just really impressed on us lately is if we're shaping, that sounds so terrible. Let me think how to say this better.
Okay.
If we are re-examining how we choose to think,
right,
this can be done digitally, that can be done digitally, and it matters. And if that's all we do for the whole summer is really drill down on what the Word says. Hi, Miss Bobby. If you really drill down on what the Word says about how we're able to choose to think, I think that's a big enough contribution to the world. Absolutely. Don't predict the outcome. Surrender that. Like, God will bring the people that He wants to bring. This is what we're called to do. Like, today was a perfect day. I got to go to a jackpot this morning. Got to come home, hang out. Family's home. Podcast at night. That is to me, that's the kind of future that I hope God's building here. I would love to think that my day that I had today is what God is sort of setting up for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for watching, commenting, listening, whether this is live or not. Thank you.
How many people are on right now?
Right now, we got 24.
That is not nearly enough questions, folks.
One is
questions.
Lacey.
No, it's not. She's not
not even here.
No, we need more questions. But I mean, I wouldn't expect it tonight. I know this is new, but Monday nights, be taking notes. If you watch something on Sunday, if you read something, if you hear something.
Or this is your time to put Jordan on blast.
I actually would live with a complaint. It's a weird part of my personality, but if you have a complaint of like, I don't like this or I don't like that, for some reason it scratches
talk to your friends that don't like Christians and tell them, watch this, tear into this guy.
It sounds so stupid, but
and I'll bring
it kind of
popcorn.
scratches an itch when someone's like, I think this, you know why? Because I think when somebody challenges me personally in that regard, I always learn something. Because every accusation is flavored with just enough of the truth to make sense.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody.
Tommy Flanagan said, how can I head better?
Okay. I thought he misspelled here.
No, ask your son. His son is a head and sucker. So cool. You got plenty of good information right there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye for now. Oh, I'm on so Levi's not here.
Turn it off.
Levi's not here. So I pushed the mic away and I was like, this is my end. But
I literally
have to, all right, well, bye for now. Thanks.